I would like to ask you to follow the 9/11 Commission precedent and appoint a special master to watch the money, to make sure that every federal dollar that gets spent here is spent on fire relief and rebuilding and not on everything else.
Good idea.
That is Breitbart's Joel Pollak talking directly to President Trump at his local fire station in Pacific Palisades a week ago, fire station number 69. Joel is with us now wearing the hat from that station. I know this is your hometown. This is your neighborhood. This is so personal for you. I know you've been writing about President Trump, literally talking about him since week one here on this show. As a human being, as a resident, as a reporter, as a conservative, what did that moment mean for you?
Well, it was very important because it is my town, but it's also the town of all my neighbors, many of whom lost their homes, and many of whom felt voiceless until that moment, because we have all been to the town hall meetings or we've watched them on Zoom, and largely what we've seen is public officials congratulating each other for what a good job they're doing. And nobody had yet, until that moment, talked about all the things that went wrong. And we can't control the wind, and we can't control the rain, but there are things within our control and within the local government's control that we didn't do right. We didn't have police directing traffic. We didn't have firefighters pre-deployed. We didn't have water in the reservoir. There are things that we could have and should have done. And I think the president needed to know that we had failed to do those things. I think that the mayor and the supervisors needed to hear it. And after I spoke out and talked about the special master to make sure the money is spent properly, my neighbors started speaking up, and they started talking to the president about how they wanted to get to their property. Mm-hmm. And Mayor Bass said, well, I don't know, maybe within a week. And Trump said, a week's not good enough. And by Monday, the very next working day, the residents of the Palisades could get back to their properties.
Yeah, and we've got some pictures that you have taken over the last couple weeks in Pacific Palisades. What are you now seeing on the ground in terms of a follow-up since that meeting?
Anybody who can get to their property is going. People are sending contractors, people are accompanying insurance assessors, people are taking the first steps to move forward with their lives. There's still so much that's uncertain, but people are grieving when they arrive at their lots, and their lots have been totally destroyed. The houses have burnt down. People are using hazardous material suits and personal protective equipment. They're going through their lots to see if they can find anything, salvage anything. Some people can't, but occasionally people can find some ceramics, or I saw a neighbor find some old photographs even. So people are processing this experience and preparing for the next step.
I mean, that is the issue that Mayor Bass pointed out, this idea that this could be a toxic waste site, essentially, and it might not be safe for people to go back. Are you concerned about that?
I'm concerned enough not to go onto properties that have burnt down. I don't go. I didn't go even before the mayor said people could visit their lots. I do think that there are concerns, but the local authorities have now said, okay, we're going to provide the hazmat suits, we're going to provide the masks, the respirators, and everything else, and now you're bearing the risk yourself. There are still public authorities like the federal EPA clearing out hazardous materials, and there are other local agencies working on it, but I think people understand the risk and they're prepared to bear it, and they just, in some cases, simply want to see what happened.
So Mayor Bass appointed Steve Soboroff to basically be her czar leading a lot of this. We've got some video of you at a local meeting where you spoke with Steve Soboroff, and Mayor Bass was speaking as well. They talked about this not being a political thing, and then when it started to get political, you walked out of this meeting. There you are with Steve Soboroff. Your assessment of Mayor Bass's leadership so far?
I was disappointed in that meeting. I felt that she was using the meeting essentially to manufacture support for herself. I think there is a lot of public criticism of her job, the fact that she was out of the country, the fact that the emergency services didn't work. What happened in that meeting was that the person who convened the meeting started by saying we should not politicize the fires, and then launched into an attack on immigration and customs enforcement, on ICE. And that's when I walked out, because if you're going to say don't politicize this because it's exploiting the fire victims, and then you proceed to politicize it, then it's not a serious meeting. It's actually a kind of political propaganda session. And at that point, the resident took over the journalist. As a journalist, I should have stayed, but as a Pacific Palisades resident, I couldn't stay, and so I left.
What's the big need, do you think, for your neighbors now going forward?
People need to know that they can rebuild speedily, and they need some certainty about what that's going to look like. And I would also say, having spoken to Steve Soboroff and Rick Caruso and other people who are stakeholders, who have property, who have investments, I think that what we need to see is leadership at that level. We need to see the Soboroffs and Carusos sitting down together and working things out, not at odds with one another, but sitting down and exerting the kind of leadership that has been missing, and talking to local residents and working with us. I think we also need a more transparent process. Nobody knows what Steve is doing, and that's not necessarily his fault, but nobody knows what he's doing or how he got there. Nobody knows what's coming out of Rick Caruso's nonprofit about rebuilding the Palisades. There's just a lot of confusion. So I think having them sit together, and work with the Trump administration, which is going to appoint a special master to make sure the money is well spent.
And do you know who that's going to be yet?
I don't yet, but Rick Grinnell is taking the lead for now in California.
Who had worked with him as the ambassador to Germany before, a Southern Californian who was in that meeting, who Trump pointed to in the meeting in real time when you brought it up. There was a moment of hope this week, which was Fire Aid, this incredible, massive concert at both the Forum and the Intuit Dome. You got a chance to go to it.
Live Nation was incredibly generous. They organized some tickets for children, teenagers mostly, in Palisades who had lost their homes. I reached out to them, and they actually provided some tickets so the kids could see the show, and I was the chaperone. There's another show also on Saturday for the firefighters, and some people are going to that show instead who couldn't make the Thursday one. But it was absolutely incredible, and really important, I think, for the kids to reconnect to music and to feel some joy. And at first I was uncertain how it would feel, because life seemed to have gone on for everyone else in the arena. Not everybody was from the Palisades, and it's a party. Is it really appropriate to have a party? But once the people on stage talked about their own homes, because so many of the musicians and Billy Crystal, the comedian, they are residents of the Palisades. Some lost homes, some saved their homes, but there was this direct connection between the audience and the performers that was incredible.
So what was your favorite moment?
My favorite moment was watching the Black Crowes perform a cover of Led Zeppelin's Going to California with Slash sitting in on guitar. Amazing.
All right.